Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, March 5th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about Senator Ron Johnson from the state of Wisconsin today announcing that his preference now is to leave the United States Senate and retire in the 2022 Senate election. However, there is a pretty big if in this scenario where he pretty much tells us that, this is his decision right now. However, if the Democrats continue to hold such a large amount of power, well, it could alter that decision. He says, that pledge on my mind is my preference then, and I would probably say it's my preference now, referring to the pledge that he made in 2016 that if he was elected, that would be his final term. He says, I'm happy to go home. But then he says, I would think that pledge was based on the assumption we wouldn't have Democrats in total control of the government, referring to the Democratic trifecta, which currently means that the Democratic Party holds control of the White House, the House, and the Senate. And he says, and we're seeing that what I would consider the devastating and harmful effects of Democrats' total control just ramming things through. So looking at the pledge here, he's essentially saying that this pledge was made without the idea that the Democrats would have a trifecta. I mean, at the time when he made this decision to not run for a third term or announced that he would only be running for this one re-election term, it sort of made sense that he was deciding to do so because, he had promised this to the people. The Republicans were in the House majority. They were in the Senate majority. They were possibly going to win the White House. So they had the means to say, maybe in 2022 things will be a better look, especially if Hillary Clinton had even won in 2016. It could be a possibility that the Republicans would be at a much better position entering into 2022. But now that he's saying, his preference now is still possibly retiring, it does sort of indicate that he's still heavily considering it. Even though he does mention that this was under the assumption there wouldn't be a Democratic majority or a Democratic trifecta, that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And the fact he hasn't completely turned away on this 2022 retirement might be an indicator, I would say, of a possibility that he decides to no longer seek a third term. And, what would this actually mean? Well, on our map right now, this is the current composition of the United States Senate with Senate retirements added in. This means that there are a total of 4 Senate retirements, 46 Republican senators, and 50 Democratic senators. So this 4-seat difference, is a result of the 4 Republicans announcing that they're retiring. This comes from Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, Ron Johnson in Ohio, Richard Burr in North Carolina, and Richard Shelby in the state of Alabama. So these are... did I say Ron Johnson? I meant to say, what's his name? I can't believe we're getting this. Ran against Strickland. Let's go ahead and see really quickly. I cannot believe I'm forgetting his name. Rob Portman. So I got it there, but I don't know. Maybe I did say Ron Johnson. Title of the video, whatever. But with these 4 retirements, this means that the Democratic Party is not expecting to see any major retirements as of the 2022 election season. We could see a possible retirement in Vermont, maybe in another safe Democratic state. But for Catherine Cortez Masto in Nevada, I'm not seeing it. For Mark Kelly in Arizona, not seeing it. For Michael Bennet in Colorado, I'm not seeing it. For Raphael Warnock, certainly not seeing it in 2022. Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire, certainly not. But for these Republicans, these retirements are an indicator that some of these races are going to be more competitive than if the Republicans decided to remain in the race. Rob Portman won by 20 points in his previous election. It looks as if this race will narrow down significantly from that. It could be likely, it could be lean, will still probably be a GOP victory, but not much narrower. Pat Toomey puts this race back into the toss-up status rather than its traditional lean towards the incumbent at the early start of the campaign season. In North Carolina, Richard Burr won't have that factor, the incumbency entering into this election, and while Republicans may still have the advantage, the GOP would not have as large of an advantage. And Richard Shelby in Alabama really makes no difference. And I think it's an interesting fun fact that Richard Shelby is the last Democrat to win the Senate race in Alabama besides Doug Jones, even though now he's the Republican incumbent. So that puts the Senate retirements at 4. And with this possibility of an additional Wisconsin, it reopens possibilities of Democrats actually making gains in 2022. You see, the 2022 Senate elections would be easy for the Republicans, had Joe Biden or if Joe Biden is unpopular. But right now it looks as if his popularity rating is holding up. And, now that we're at a point where the Republicans, all they need to do is just win 1 seat in order to win back Senate control, I find it very interesting that they're struggling to do so. looking at this Senate map, they have possibilities in Arizona, Nevada, New Hampshire, and Georgia, but that could be easily counteracted if a very weird scenario, which would bring the Democrats to this point. But let's say they're able to win Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and North Carolina. That wouldn't be too out of the ordinary, and possibly winning Ohio. You see, these retirements are indicators that these races are going to become more competitive and that the Republican Party might not be too confident in their re-election chances there because of these retirements. If we do actually see the inclusion of Ron Johnson on this list, well, it would honestly be a very detrimental blow to the GOP. And I think he partially recognizes that, but also recognizes that he made a promise. If you remember my first look at the 2022 Senate election videos, I think this is before the 2020 election had happened. Ron Johnson had initially said he was not going to run for re-election. If we actually look, he initially declined. And, he announced that he's no longer ruling out a bid for the governorship, or, he's filed the paperwork to run in 2022. So he's keeping his options open. He is keeping his options open. But this was a promise that was made back in 2016 when he ran against the former senator actually in this seat, Russ Feingold. He had said that, this would be his final term if elected. And I think that's something that may come back to haunt him, but not more than his staunch support of President Trump and the denial of the electoral certification in certain states, the vote to deny certain states from having millions of their voters heard because of election irregularities that he cited that there was no substantial proof behind. And looking at what Ron Johnson is doing in the state of Wisconsin, essentially, he's building up a name ID for himself, again, for 2022, with the news covering this the same way I am, the same way that the local papers are. So if he does decide to run, it's been in speculation, will he run, will he not run? It drives up the name discussion amongst the local media, but also gives him an easy way out, because this is not something that wasn't brought upon the GOP before. And I understand many GOP members are pressuring him now to stay in the race, but the fact that it's still under consideration means that maybe Republicans don't expect 2022 to be a red wave year, because you can go back on a promise. Lindsey Graham did it easily in 2020 when he specifically said, use my words against me. They did it. And he said, no, I didn't say that. Or, that wasn't the promise. It was different circumstances. Ron Johnson could easily do that now, especially if, as many Republicans are touting that 2022 will undoubtedly be a blue wave year with Rick Scott, the chairman of the Republican Senatorial Committee, looking at what they are promising. They're essentially saying, yeah, we are going to absolutely carry Wisconsin on top of picking up 4 seats. But if Ron Johnson and the GOP may not be too super secure about that, we might see a reason why Ron Johnson is still leaving it open-ended. And I think this comes as a result of the fact that Joe Biden won the state of Wisconsin in the 2020 election. When you notice that Joe Biden was able to defeat Donald Trump relative to 2016, some counties did shift to the right. Let's see if it'll show me here. I guess it's not going to show me. But what you'll notice is that some counties did shift to the right, but we saw shifts to the left. In Milwaukee County, in Waukesha County, in Ozaukee County. I think I'm botching these names, but what you're looking at is a shift in major cities, a shift in major regions with very large populations. And as a result, the Democratic Party does better statewide, enough to defeat Donald Trump by a smaller margin than Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton, but still a flip regardless. And looking at the 2016 Senate election results in Wisconsin, part of Ron Johnson's victory here was carried across the finish line because of Donald Trump. Now, I do think he would have won this Senate race had Hillary Clinton won the state, because it would have undoubtedly been close either way. And Ron Johnson did win by a pretty considerable amount. We're talking about 3.4% difference here when Donald Trump won the state by 0.77%. But it still is close. It's not a deafening margin. It reminds me a lot of the 2010 Senate election results in the state of Wisconsin, in which Ron Johnson actually defeated Russ Feingold again, in 2016, but this was 2010. Russ Feingold was the incumbent. He defeated him here by nearly 5 points. We're talking 4.9%. 2016 was closer, but not close enough. And, following the election result where we didn't see Donald Trump win this state, maybe Ron Johnson is slightly scared. And, while he has had a moderately strong electoral history, Ron Johnson was brand new to the political aisle, never been an elected official prior to this Senate election, actually touted that in much of his campaign. What you will notice is that there are, pockets of support for the Republicans that could carry them across the finish line in 2022, but I don't think Ron Johnson is super solid about that. I don't think he's super solid about that, and also could potentially run for governor. We could see him potentially shift focuses to the governorship against Governor Tony Evers. I would not be surprised if he decided to change his political aspirations as a result of realizing that 2022 might not be that red wave year as many Republicans are suggesting, as Rick Scott is suggesting at CPAC, as Donald Trump is promising to his supporters. Because looking at the Senate relief bill, the COVID relief bill, and looking at the Capitol insurrection, looking at Ron Johnson's continued support of President Trump, even beyond that point, he is going to be attacked for it. While that may be how he believes politically, personally, it's still going to hurt him. Trump is not this super esteemed figure in Wisconsin, maybe amongst the GOP, but certainly not amongst the general populace, which is why they voted against him in 2022. The results in Wisconsin were an indicator that Ron Johnson is no longer in a safe position. And I wouldn't even have argued that 2016 or 2010 were safe positions, both of which were very good years for the GOP. Some would argue 2016 more than 2010. I would argue the opposite, but both of them were very good years for the GOP. In fact, after 2016, the Republicans were in the trifecta, including Ron Johnson's Senate seat in Wisconsin. But looking at what's unfolding ahead of 2022, so far all of the potential retirements are amongst the GOP with the exception of Patrick Leahy in Vermont. And that's not even a remotely competitive race. I mean, looking at the Senate retirements, they're happening in the wrong states at the wrong times, but as some Democrats would argue, for the right reasons, because they know that some of these Republicans might not win again. And it would be very embarrassing if you're denied by your voters in what is expected to be, widely expected to be by members of the media and by members of the political punditry region for 2022 to be that red wave year. And if you end up losing, well, that'll be a bad stain on your record. You'd rather retire as an incumbent than be defeated by a challenger, which means that the voters no longer wanted you, whereas you could just say, I retired because I didn't want to run again. It was my decision, not that the voters rejected you. But since he also has no conclusive decision, he is still heavily weighing running in 2022. This is not to say he won't run, but the fact it's in discussion certainly speaks volumes. I think that if this was a very shored up state, as many Republicans are suggesting, that he undoubtedly would have ran. This is a promise, but promises aren't always kept by politicians, as many of us know. This is not something that was a binding agreement, that was a contract written down. He didn't agree to this, and beyond what the voters pretty much said, we'll elect you. But first of all, we don't know how many voters really kept that in mind when electing him. I think a lot of it was just down ballot overperformance because Donald Trump was on the ballot. But the Senate retirements are starting to add up against the GOP. And Ron Johnson certainly is not helping. And Ron Johnson, as a political campaigner, I think it's just very interesting that he's someone who has been a very big supporter of President Trump, despite coming from an arguably more Democratic state than Republican state. Donald Trump was the first Republican to win Wisconsin, I think, since 1984. So looking at that long streak, Wisconsin had not gone to the GOP in a very, very, very long time. It had been close before, sometimes closer, but the GOP never was able to win it statewide before Donald Trump. And on the same ballot as Donald Trump, Ron Johnson won. So maybe he realized Trump is the only one who could get me across the finish line. I'm going to repay him through this support in the Senate, through this support in terms of rallies, in terms of speeches, in terms of statements, even beyond his presidency, which I somewhat understand, but I do not understand why he's so quick to jump on the Trump train when Donald Trump didn't even win the state to begin with. He did in 2016, but 4 years can certainly change a lot. And if Ron Johnson truly believes the election was rigged, then this could also be a reason why he might not be deciding to run for office again in 2022, because maybe he thinks that the election will be supposedly rigged against him. So far what I'm seeing is that the GOP might actually be afraid in some of these races. There is no reason for there to be 5 potential retiring incumbents right now, 4 already announcing that they're retiring, 3 of which come from swing states. The GOP cannot afford to lose any races right now. The Democrats more than them, but the Republican Party cannot afford to lose any races right now. And with the retirements in Ohio, the state is no longer safe. With the retirements in Pennsylvania, the state is no longer lean. With the retirements in North Carolina, the state is no longer lean. With a retirement in Wisconsin, that would add to an already evolving Senate map that looks increasingly more favorable for the Democratic Party as the days go on. So all eyes on Wisconsin, all eyes on Ron Johnson. He says that he's going to allow people to save some money for right now until he makes a final decision. But I think it's a very telling sign that he's keeping it in consideration as of right now, given the circumstances of the state over the past few years. I mean, looking at it shift from 2016, the Democratic Party did better in that April election in the Supreme Court. They did better in 2020. They did significantly better in 2018. The Democratic Party still has a presence in the state. And while the national GOP may think that it's 100% winnable and within reach, and they are true with that, but they're also, I think, way too overconfident, which is why Ron Johnson has not announced a 2022 bid, but is still keeping the option open. I think he's waiting to see what happens with Biden's approval rating, but as of right now, it's not looking too good for the Republicans in Wisconsin to run Ron Johnson again. It's possible, depending on the circumstance, but as of right now, if this is his preference now, and we're talking a year to 2 out, we could see this preference not change too much. He's filed the paperwork, but so did David Perdue, and David Perdue decided to not run a week later. So we will see what happens with Ron Johnson. All eyes on Wisconsin. Could we see a 5th Senate retirement from the GOP, especially in a swing state, the 4th swing state? We would see, only time will tell. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.